23rd of March, Rabbi Levitt Daniel.
According to
Okay, Bear's in the middle of reading the notes to verse 20.
right. So what he's saying is verse 20 should have started or been translated that while I was still speaking. I guess that's what he was saying. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. Also in 21 when we get there, because that also begins with Va'od. It's interesting, they're different trup though. Okay. So the next one, speaking, praying, and confessing. These are the same three categories mentioned before in verse 4. Medaber here is identical with Va'amra there. And after finishing the above quoted prayer and not receiving an answer from God, he commenced to pray again in the same manner. The prayer followed the sequence just mentioned. In verse 4, Va'omra, and I said, is mentioned last because it is followed by the actual words of the prayer. It is placed last to introduce them. Here, since the text of the prayer is not recorded, the words describing the three parts are given in the actual sequence. Okay. And then my sin and the sin of my people Israel. Okay, that's the commentary to verse 4. Next one. And pouring out my supplication. Malbim interprets the verse thus: Midaber umipalel, speaking and praying, are linked together. Speaking in prayer. Okay. This is the first category of prayer, which is the outpouring of the soul to God through which the vakut, intimacy with God, is reached. This is probably the same as the first category described above, according to the Abarbanel, which is the giving of praise to Hashem. Then comes umitvadeh and confessing. And finally, umapil techinati, and pouring out my supplication, which refers to the prayer itself. The coupling of tefillah, prayer, with tachanun, supplication, throughout this chapter is a redundancy that requires explanation. It may be fruitful to define the difference between tefillah, the Shemona Esrei, and the tachanun, sanctions of the daily prayer, sections, I'm sorry, and the tachanun sections of daily prayer. Rambam states there are 8 things the person who prays should be careful to do. Prostration. How is prostration done? He sits upon the ground and falls upon his face and offers any supplication he desires. It follows, therefore, that there are some basic differences between tefillah and tachanun. 1. Tefillah is said standing and tachanun is said face down. 2. Tefillah is intended for the klal, the public, whereas tachanun can be for the private needs. And nusach hatefillah, tefillah has nusach hatefillah, a set formula to which additions must conform. Okay, see above verse 4, Tachanun is a prayer unfeathered by any form or formulation. Right. Okay. Therefore, after Daniel had gone through the entire sequence necessary for tefillah, he was able to present his private tachanun, supplication, free of conventions or rules. The language used, umapil techinati, pouring out of my supplication, is clearly reminiscent of the terminology used by the sages and by all Jews to this day. Nefilat apayim, falling on one's face, which suggests the posture to be taken during this prayer as described by the Rambam. And for my God's holy mountain, the word al is interpreted in the sense of be'ad, for, inasmuch as Daniel prayed that God answer his prayer for the sake of the mountain upon which the sanctuary will be built. Oh. Okay, so I guess now we're up to where we're supposed to start.
Yes. Okay. Lou, please take over Pasuk Chaf Aleph.
Kaf Aleph. Kaf Aleph. V'od ani medaber batefila v'ha'ish Gavriel asher ra'isi v'chazon batechila mu'af bi'af nogea elai ke'es min chas arev. I was still speaking in prayer when the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the earlier vision, was lifted in flight approaching me at about the time of the afternoon offering. Where's the commentary? Oh, here's commentary. I was still speaking in prayer. This refers back to the prayer mentioned in the previous verse. Malbim derives from this verse that Daniel started a third round of prayer. When the man Gabriel, in 8:15:16, he is referred to similarly as Gaver, man. According to Abarbanel, who holds that Daniel's fasting and prayer were a consequence of the vision he had from Gabriel, it is very fitting that Gabriel himself returned to clarify matters to him, for him. In the earlier vision, in chapter 8, that had taken place in the third year of Belshazzar, according to Rashi, the afternoon offering, the Tamid Shel Beis Ha'arbayim, Tamid offering of the afternoon, is called Mincha, as evidenced in 2 Kings 16:15. The morning burnt offering and the afternoon offering, and in Psalms 141:2. The Midrash Shir Shirim Rabbah, Tanchuma to Pinchas, quoted in Rashi and Isaiah, tells us a person never lodged in Yerushalayim with unintentional sins to his account, any sins done at night were atoned for by the morning tamid, and the sins of the day were atoned for by the afternoon tamid, i.e., the fat of the day's offerings, which was burned upon the altar at night, not the offering of the tamid itself, which was done by day. Therefore, the offering of the afternoon tamid itself, since it was not intended to atone for sin, was called a mincha, a gift.
Ah,
This is also the reason why the corresponding afternoon prayer, mincha, is so called. Tosafot asks why the afternoon prayer is called mincha. One of the answers that is that we find that the prophet Elijah's prayer was answered at the time of the mincha offering, i.e., the meal offering that is usually called mincha, as is written in Kings 1. And it came to pass at the time of the meal offering. From this, the Talmud in Brachos derives that a person should always be careful to pray the mincha prayer because Elijah was answered only at that time. The implication is that this time of day is propitious for the acceptance of prayers. For this reason, the prayer is called mincha. It is therefore very fitting that Daniel 2 was answered while praying mincha. The translation should accordingly read, at the time of the afternoon meal offering. However, Ramban holds that minchas arev does not refer to the offering of the mincha. Rather, it is a name given to the afternoon. Mincha is from nacha, to rest, referring to the resting of the sun when the great heat of the midday sun seems to relent. Similar options are stated by Radak and Abu Draham, quoted in the margin of Pesachim.
Okay. Uh-huh. So he's got a whole chabur over here, whether the language in the pasuk minchas arev is referring to the time of the offering or just the time of day. So there's two opinions. Okay. All right. Does that do it? That does it.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, all the best, everybody.
Have a good day.
Great week to Meir, Bezrat Hashem.
good week.
See you soon.
There's Toivo.
So.
We'll be back soon.